You know that feeling when you ask an AI assistant a question and it feels more like a glorified search engine than a real expert? Well, that's one of the biggest hurdles in AI right now. And today, we're not just going to talk about the problem, we're going to dive into a framework that's designed to teach AI how to actually think. Okay, let's start with what seems like a super simple question. A company makes $75,000. What's its corporate tax rate? I mean, you'd think that's a straightforward answer, right? But for an AI, well, the reality is often way more complicated. Because what happens when its knowledge base has two different documents that both seem to fit? Document A says 25%, document B says 23%. So which one is it? Suddenly, the AI has a problem, and that means you have a problem, because you're left with a mess of conflicting info instead of a clear answer. This classic problem really pulls back the curtain on a technology called Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG for short. It's the engine behind most of the AI assistants you use, but in its basic form, it's what you might call a naive assistant. Full of promise, sure, but also loaded with hidden pitfalls. Now, don't get me wrong, the idea behind RAG is actually pretty brilliant. It connects a super powerful AI brain, like a GPT-4, to a massive library of external, up-to-the-minute information. This means the AI isn't stuck with just what it was trained on months ago. It can pull in the latest facts and figures to answer your questions. The way this naive RAG works is, well, deceptively simple. You ask a question, the system grabs a few documents it thinks are relevant, and then it just feeds them to the AI to spit out an answer. It's a straight line, a one-way street, and there are absolutely no off-ramps for critical thinking. And that simplicity? Yeah, it leads to some very predictable failures. Research has shown a bunch of common ways these systems fall flat. Sometimes the right document doesn't even make it into the top results. Other times, the answer is right there in the text, but the AI can't pull it out because of distracting noise, or, like in our tax example, straight-up contradictions. So, how in the world do we fix this? We have to upgrade our naive assistant. We need to turn it into an expert analyst. And that's where this new cognitive architecture comes into play, evaluative contextual synthesis, or ECS. Now, ECS isn't just some minor tweak to the RAG process. It's a complete overhaul. Think of it as a framework built from the ground up to give the AI the one thing it's been missing, the ability to actually reason about the information it finds. So, this framework is built on three pillars. The first one is contextual. This is the bedrock, the foundation. It's all about understanding the background. For a tax document, it's not just about the rate itself, but the laws, the dates, and the jurisdictions that give that number its actual meaning. The second pillar is evaluative, and this one is the game changer. It's the critical filter. Here, the AI stops being a passive librarian and becomes an active investigator. Is this source reliable? Is this document more official than that one? This is where it learns to weigh the evidence. And finally, the third pillar is synthetic. This is where the magic really happens. The AI takes all those contextualized, carefully evaluated pieces of information and weaves them all together into a single, coherent, and, most importantly, well-reasoned final answer. Now, what's absolutely crucial here is that this is not a straight line like naive RAG. ECS works as a dynamic loop. The system gathers context, it evaluates it, and it synthesizes an initial understanding. But then, that synthesis might spark a new question, sending it right back to gather more context, constantly refining and improving its answer. It's always learning. All right, so that's the theory. Sounds pretty good, right? But how does our new expert analyst actually handle that tricky tax question we started with? Let's put this ECS framework to the test and see it in action. So, let's circle back. We're faced with our original headache, two conflicting tax rates for a $75,000 income. How does an ECS system tackle this differently? Okay, this slide gets right to the heart of it, where the naive RAG just throws the problem at you. Here's 25% and 23%. Good luck. The ECS system is designed to actually resolve that conflict and give you a single, justified, trustworthy answer. So here's how those three pillars work together to fix this mess. The evaluative pillar checks for authority. Maybe one document is a brand new law that makes the old one obsolete. The contextual pillar looks at metadata, like publication dates, to build a timeline. And finally, the synthetic pillar puts it all together, generating the correct answer and explaining why it shows 23% over 25% and even citing the right source. Problem solved. You know, this whole shift is about way more than just getting better answers. Researchers have been pointing out a very real concern that if we rely too much on simple AI, we could actually dull our own critical thinking skills. Frameworks like ECS are about building AI that models and supports critical thinking instead of just trying to replace it. And that really brings us to the biggest question of all. This isn't just some technical upgrade for nerds. This is a foundational step toward building AI systems that we can genuinely trust with complex, high-stakes work. The implications here are huge. By actively checking its sources, ECS helps fight misinformation. For a big company, it can create true organizational intelligence by making sense of messy, conflicting internal documents. And by showing its work, it helps us build AI that's both accountable and transparent. You know, in social science, when we talk about trusting another person, it often comes down to three key things. First, there's competence. Can they actually do the job right? Second, integrity. Do they operate honestly and ethically? And third, benevolence. Do they genuinely have your best interests at heart? What's so amazing is that ECS maps directly onto these human pillars of trust. Competence is about getting the tax rate right. Integrity is about showing its work, citing sources, being totally transparent. And benevolence is about resolving confusion to actually help the user, not just dump a bunch of data on them. It's designed to be genuinely useful. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Frameworks like ECS are making AI much, much better at reasoning. So the real question for us becomes, how do we design our systems and maybe even adjust our own expectations to build a relationship with these tools that's based on real, earned trust? Thanks for joining me.